Hi guys, this is Jeffrey, JGB146 Blake for GrinderSchool.com. Today I'm coming to you with what will become a series of poker strategy videos on YouTube. Basically, we will be looking at a few key poker hands, examining what makes them profitable or unprofitable in the long run, and discussing any mistakes that were made. Today we're going to look at a cash game hand of Pot Limit Omaha. Let's dig in. Okay, so we're dealt 9-10, 10-queen, double suited on the button. Now, as you probably know, in Omaha, we only get to use 2 of these 4 cards at Showdown. But still, we have a pair of 10s that we could end up with. We have 2 ways that we could make a flush, and we have a lot of potential, depending on what happens, to make some good straights. So this is a decent hand. It's not a powerhouse hand, but it's a decent hand to play in Omaha. The fact that we're on the button makes it definitely playable as long as nothing crazy happens before he gets to us. Let's go ahead and see. Well, we get a fold, we get a single raise, and we get a call. Again, nothing crazy has happened. We have the button, so we'll be in position. This is a pretty straightforward call. We do so, and both of the blinds fold. Now there's $12 in the pot, and the flop comes out. And sure enough, there are 3 hearts. We hit our flush. But it's a 10 high flush. That's not something with a lot of power behind it, especially since everyone in Omaha has 4 cards, and a lot of people tend to play suited cards. It makes a lot of sense to do so. So we don't love our hand. We certainly don't hate our hand with the flush, but we don't love it. Anyway, let's see what happens. Well, we get a check and another check. Most of the time, we're going to go ahead and accept that this means that people don't have the flush. Sometimes they will check here when they do, but most of the time they don't. Usually you don't see a lot of slow playing in Omaha because there are so many things that can happen to kind of screw up your hand. That said, I think this is a good spot for us to go ahead and check behind. The reason that we're doing that is that there's not a lot of danger to our hand on this particular board, and it gets a little bit dicey if we go ahead and put out a bet and then someone makes a big raise, because most of the time when they're doing that, it means that they're going to have a bigger flush. So instead of taking the $12 now and just, basically going out and buying a dinner with a beer, I think we can do a little bit better and maybe earn, dinner and a movie or something like that. So we just go ahead and check. What happens? Well, a 10 comes on the turn. Now that doesn't change anything as far as us having the flush, the 10 high flush, as our hand that we're playing. But it does give us some potential. If we happen to be behind a bigger flush, because there's obviously a king, a queen, and a jack, that if someone has those and another heart, they're going to have us beat. But if they do, with that extra 10 out there now, any ace, 3, or 7 on the river will give us a full house to kind of, enable us to laugh in their face that they thought they were going to win with the king high flush. It's a great card for us, then that it helps our hand. But again, if we raise, a 7, ace, 3, or I guess the case 10, coming on the river isn't something that's going to happen a whole lot. It's maybe 20% of the time. So we don't really want to put a whole lot of money in if that's the only way we can win the hand. Also, again, if we don't make a super aggressive play, our opponents might stay in with a weaker hand. Let's see what happens. We get a small bet and a fold, and it's back to us. So I like to just call this bet because, again, I don't want to force him to fold basically all of the hands that I beat. On the river, we see a jack of hearts, and that's a good card for us as well, because now only the queen of hearts and the king of hearts are out as bigger flushes. Our opponent bets another fairly small bet. It's half the size of the pot, and this is a pretty straightforward call. If he had made it a full pot size bet, it's a little bit more difficult, but we probably still want to call because we have underrepresented our hand, which will induce him to bluff. In any case, we call this bet, and he flips over jack 8, 8, 9. So on the flop he had nothing. If we had bet, we would indeed have only gotten the small $12 pot. Instead, we ended up with a $48 pot. Now part of that money was ours, but we did get an extra $18 out of this guy when on the turn he had the potential to make a straight. He got the straight on the river with his 9-8, He's got 7, 8, 9, 10 jack. But of course, the straight is no good because we have the 10 high flush, and a flush beats a straight. We basically got him to put a decent amount of money in, more money than was in the entire pot on the flop, by just kind of underselling our hand and letting him kind of suck along there and make a second best hand. This is why you don't want to make a really aggressive play with a weak made hand in Omaha, because you can get worse hands to pay you off if you don't, and if you get action on the flop in this type of situation, you're probably in some pretty bad shape. Now, wasn't that interesting? Hopefully now you'll be better prepared to avoid spewing off chips in Pot Limit Omaha, especially with hands that are strong, but not really strong enough to withstand action. You can maybe get extra chips out of people by playing it appropriately. In future weeks, we will definitely be covering some other games. We'll look at No Limit Hold'em cash games, and we'll look at some tournament situations and some sit and goes. With that, I'm going to leave you for this week. But I do want to put in a word from our sponsors, which is grinderschool.com. But I thought you were Grinder School. Well, I mean, I do run it, so I guess that's kind of right. Definitely check out Grinder School. There's a free podcast that we release every week that you can download for free. And in my opinion, we have some of the best low-stakes poker training available online anywhere. See you next time.